Hi folks, welcome back to the Tabletop's Edge and another entry in the GOSS diary. Now at this point I have completed my first full game turn. That would be the AM turn of June 6th. And I've just started in on the PM turn for June 6th. Now for those of you unfamiliar with GOSS, each game day has 3 turns to it. There's an AM turn, a PM turn, and a night turn. And with Atlantic Wall, for this particular scenario, it has 2 specialized stages, an airborne drop stage and an amphibious invasion stage, which occur prior to actually the start of the first, I'll call it standard game turn. And the vast majority of my time spent with the game so far has been consumed with getting through the airborne drop stage and the amphibious invasion stage. Actually the first turn itself, once I completed the amphibious invasion stage, did not take that long. And that's driven, I think, primarily by the fact that even though the Germans do have a number of units set up on the map, the vast majority of them have not yet been activated. So there really weren't that many Germans to move and do something with. I would estimate roughly that altogether there may be about a division's worth of active units on map right now for the Germans, which I'd say somewhere in the neighborhood of 20-25 counters to be moved and fought with. And a lot of those counters are either too far away to actually get in a position to do something to the Allies, or they are simply too weak to really make any attacks. So it did not take all that long really to kind of run through that first game turn. Now I expect that that's going to change as we get through the rest of the 6th of June into the 7th and even the 8th, and most, if not all, of the on-map German units begin to activate and are capable of moving and fighting. And on the Allied side, while they do have a fair number of units that have landed and cleared the beaches, they've consumed most of their movement factors in fighting through the beach defenses and just getting off the beach. So they weren't really able to drive that far. The Americans are also prevented from making any prepared assaults on the entire day of the 6th of June. So it limits their attack possibilities quite a bit. So oddly enough, despite Atlantic Wall being the largest, I would say by far, game of the GOSS system, this particular scenario starts off actually fairly small if you ignore the amphibious invasion stage. Now, my impressions of GOSS overall at this point are still pretty positive, but they're not 100% positive. So let's get the bad out of the way first and talk about what I really has left kind of a bad taste in my mouth. Now, when it comes to the game mechanics and the system itself, the only negative things I have to say about it so far, at least, all involve the amphibious invasion stage. I guess called it the core GOSS system. You know, the standard game turns. My experience running through the AM turn of the 6th of June was not bad at all. You've heard me talk about the airborne drop stage, and I really like that. I kind of love it, actually. I think it's very clever, provides just the right feel, I think, to sort of recreate the Allied airborne drops. But as much as I like the airborne module, I detest the amphibious invasion module. I didn't think I would, because on paper it reads pretty well, but I'm like many of you, I'm sure you've come across games in the past that read really well on paper, but just in practice were just not enjoyable or didn't work for whatever reason. And I appreciate what they're trying to do with the invasion module, and you know, GOSS is known as a detailed system, and I'm going to probably start referring to it as a detailed system, not a complex system or a complicated system, because I'm not sure that it really is. I think that reputation may be a bit overblown, and probably due primarily to the poor state of the rule books, at least prior to the publication of Lucky Forward. But there's no arguing that GOSS is is detailed, and so the designers decided to bring that same level of detail to the actual amphibious landings the morning of June 6th. Now, like I said, it reads pretty well. They have a separate beach display for all 5 beaches that are broken down. You can see into these different boxes. It's rows and columns which form these boxes. And you will play through this amphibious invasion stage with all of the units broken down into kind of a generic invasion unit, which you then have to convert back into a standard unit when, or rather before they are able to move off the beach and enter the regular game map. Now, the problems I have with it aren't necessarily the mechanics themselves. The rules are generally pretty clear in that section. I think they're not quite as well written as the airborne drop module, but they're still it's reasonably easy to figure out what you need to be doing. The problem I have with it is that it's just simply, I think, too much, and especially for the final result that you get. I've got to think that there's a better way to get the same end result, but without all of the time and effort required. And what I'm really sort of least happy about is the German fire segment. So with each of the, when you run through the amphibious invasion stage, on the morning, on the AM game turn, and then again on the PM game turn of June 6th, there are actually 3 subphases, which means you run through the amphibious invasion sequence of play 3 separate times as each assault wave and then reinforcing waves land on the beaches. And basically, you know, you're going to have the units that are scheduled to land will have to check for losses against the beach obstacles, which are given just an obstacle rating, and you'll roll on a chart to determine if any of the units are pinned or if they suffer a step loss. That will get them to the beach here, this beach row. Once they've landed, it is now time for the German defenders to fire. And you can see I don't have any of the units here because the Allies did manage to finally clear Omaha Beach on the PM amphibious invasion stage of June 6th. So at this point now, all 5 beaches are finally clear. But you can see on the beach display here the little symbols for the Widerstand-Nest that represent the defenses for each of the beaches. And what you need to do when it's time for the Germans to fire, the German resistance nests here are able to fire at all of the boxes they are eligible to fire at. So instead of where most times when you're conducting fire, you'll select a unit, the unit will fire at a particular target, and then you move on to the next one. Here, and it makes sense why they do this, because these resistance nest markers represent, you know, a defensive complex of some sort. So the defenders really are just going to be hosing down this whole area that the attackers are trying to move across. But you need to basically go box by box, and you will fire at every box that has an allied unit in the box, and you need to calculate the fire value that's being directed on that particular box. Well, the resistance nests can fire at all of the boxes in their column sort of below. So when we talk about a below and above, the displays basically run from the beach to the shingle. In Omaha's case, they have a pavilion, then to the coastal defense, and then to the exit row. So as you move closer to the exits, you're moving up, and as you're closer to the beach, you're moving down, or you're lower. So they can fire at basically all of the boxes in their sector, which you can see these dark lines, these thick black lines define the various sectors, as well as all of the sectors in an adjacent, all of the boxes in an adjacent sector. So, for example, to calculate the fire on this particular box, you'll be adding up the fire value from this resistance nest, this one, and that one. This particular box, this nest is in a box that is not adjacent to this sector, so we're not going to count this one. But you've got 3 that can potentially fire at this box. Just like here, you're going to have 1, 2, 3 because it's all in their sector, plus this one because it's adjacent to the sector. So you're adding up the fire value of those 4 against that box. Then you're going to add up the fire value of these 3 against that box. You're going to have this 1 firing at that box, and so on. So you work all the way across. You can see there are, I think, 9 different boxes just in the beach box row alone. And as you get multiple waves landing and the allied units are moving up, you're going to have to go across the beach row. Then you're going to have to go across the shingle row and the pavilion row, and so on. And as you get, and at some point there are a lot of units on this display. Some of the boxes are not very big, and it can just be a giant pain to keep trying to calculate the fire value from all of the potential German units that might be able to fire into each of these boxes. When you do that, you're going to roll a die on one table, which is going to tell you which column you're going to use on a separate table, which then you roll another die on that second table to then implement the results against the units in that box. And you're going to do that again and again and again and again and so on. And it's just, it very quickly turns into drudgery. It is a long, painful, not terribly enjoyable process that you just have to go through. And you're going to do that for the first subphase, then the second subphase, and finally the third subphase. Now, I thought when I did it initially for the AM turn, I was doing it on 5 beaches, and it was a lot, and it kind of left a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth. I thought, well, at least I've cleared 4 of the beaches in this process, so when I get to the PM game turn, I'm only going to have to deal with Omaha Beach. And unfortunately, it was even worse on that PM Amphibious Invasion Stage, even though I was dealing with just Omaha. Now, in fairness, Omaha is the absolute worst of the 5 beaches. It's the biggest beach, so it's got the most boxes. It also has by far the most number of defensive positions that you have to deal with. If we look at Utah Beach here, as an example, and even Gold Beach, you can see Utah Beach has exactly 3 different Widerstand-Nesten on the board. So calculating the fire value for the particular boxes is not that difficult, and there aren't nearly as many American units coming ashore. So running through Utah Beach, the system actually works just fine. And like I said, there's nothing necessarily wrong with the mechanisms that they use for the Amphibious Invasion Stage. It's just that it's just not worth the effort you put into it as to what you get out of it. I will say that it seems to offer fairly historically accurate results, however. And what we're looking at eventually, once you have managed to clear the beaches, you are seeing the units that survived here in these landing boxes, and then they will enter the map on one of those 4 hexes representing various sectors of the beaches. And at Omaha, the Americans, and part of it could have been, I'm sure, some unfortunate luck, but the Americans took some pretty heavy casualties, far heavier than we saw on any of the other beaches. For instance, I think there's a regiment of, which one? I think it's the 16th Regiment of 1st Infantry, and maybe the 115th, one of the 29th Division's regiments suffered 67% casualties each. So out of the 3 battalions, each with 3 steps, so that's that's 18 steps total. There are 6 steps that actually survived the beach invasion on Omaha Beach, and will be able to exit here over the next several turns and start moving inland. So it's not that I have necessarily an issue with the results that the system provides. It's just, it's very time consuming. It's not very fun. There's not a lot of meaningful decisions to be made by either player. The German player is basically there simply rolling the dice over and over and over. Uh, now, so I really do. I'm not a fan of the Amphibious Invasion Stage as it's set up here, but that's primarily because of the time sink that's involved in actually getting through it. If we were doing it for just a smaller beach, even Gold Beach is not that bad, but again, it's got you can see 5 different resistance nests along with a couple of infantry companies. It's just a lot, and I can't help but think that there would be a better way, a much quicker way to roll and see what condition the Allied units are in once they've made it past the beach defenses. So that's kind of the biggest gripe that I have right now, and it's not really necessarily a gripe against the GOSS system. It's really unique to this particular game, Atlantic Wall. Now, for those of you that are on the fence about GOSS as a whole, don't let my negative experience with the Amphibious Invasion Stage sour you on GOSS, because if you play any of the other GOSS games that have been published to date, you will never have to deal with the Amphibious Invasion Stage. Also, if you play any other scenario in Atlantic Wall itself that begins anytime after the 6th of June, you're not going to have to deal with the invasion stage either. And what I've found with my very limited experience with GOSS itself in the regular game turn portions that I've played thus far is that it's not as complicated as I was led to believe, or that it appears to be. There's a lot that I do like about it. It's still way too early to make any kind of definitive judgment on it, though. Atlantic Wall, this particular scenario, has a lot of special rules regarding the logistics for certainly the first day. And in a way, I think it might actually be kind of good, because there's very little in the way of logistics that you have to deal with on the first day, June 6th. And then over the next several days through probably the 10th of June, you'll have to start dealing with more and more logistics. For example, on June 6th, all units are considered to be in general supply. So you don't even have to bother about trying to trace general supply to determine the supply state of them. No units can be isolated on the 6th of June. And you're not really dealing with the logistical parts of the game where you're trying to basically allocate your army's truck points into ammo delivery, fuel delivery, and motorization. You're giving us, the Germans have a set number of points that are available only for motorization of leg units, and you don't have to worry about the supporting corps headquarters, for example, and setting the artillery depletion value. All that is basically just set for you. And then, like I said, over the next couple of days, you're going to get more and more into that. So in a way, it might be a nice way to sort of ease into the logistical side of GOSS by playing this particular scenario. So other than that, for now, I think that's probably going to be it. I did just want to kind of pass on my kind of negative experience with the Amphibious Invasion Stage. Fortunately, though, now that the beaches are clear, I am done with that and will not have to deal with that at all moving forward. And I can now kind of focus more and more on the actual GOSS system in the regular game turns. To give you a little update of where things stand at the end of the AM game turn, there was one conf group of the 243rd Infantry Division, which is kind of out in this portion of the Cotentin, activated. They are moving as rapidly as they can here to the east to try to stop the Americans from expanding and maybe even push back some of the airborne units here. You can see a couple of very large stacks on the drop zones for the 82nd Airborne. Those are all fog of war units that are waiting to be regrouped, which won't happen until the AM game turn of June 7th. So we've got this coming PM game turn and then the night turn before these guys have an opportunity to turn into real units, which has made me a little nervous about making sure Germans don't overrun those particular drop zones. So the airborne units that have regrouped and reorganized, their top priority has been protecting these drop zones over the next or over the first few turns. And then fortunately for the Americans, the Germans really don't have much that can threaten them. There are a couple of battalions here of the 91st and 709th that are pushing down from the north, trying to reach those drop zones before these units can all turn into useful American units. Utah Beach was cleared at the end of the AM game turn, and you can see some units have begun to move off of the beach. They've really only been able to get a couple of miles, again due to most of their movement factors being consumed in the time spent getting on the beach, eliminating the defenses and getting themselves organized and moving off. So I would expect in this coming game turn, the landing forces are going to continue to push inland and start to clear out. These red markers you see are German Widerstandnesten and Stützpunkte. So they're resistance nests and they're strong points or support points that are a little more inland from the beaches themselves. As we continue to move eastwards, Omaha was just cleared, so there are, you can see the survivors of the amphibious assault waves here waiting to start to come ashore. There's not much in the way that of active German units in this portion. The 352nd does have, I think, one regiment. They've got a Pioneer Battalion here and a Panzerjäger Battalion there that are moving up towards the beach. The regiment that activated was I think it was the 915th, and they've got a few battalions here a little further to the east. They are sort of in the Bayou area here, and as you can see, we get to the sector with the Commonwealth beaches. And Gold Beach, the 50th Infantry Division has started to push off a little bit. Again, none of these beaches were really cleared, and none of the units were really able to get off of those beaches until the end of the Amphibious Invasion Stage of the AM game turn. So they didn't have a lot of movement left to push inland. Here we have the Canadians pushing south. One of the German 716th companies that was a little closer to the beach has kind of pulled back and is attempting to dig in there to try to hold the Canadians close to the shore. And then here on Sword Beach, you can see a number of units starting to make their way off of the beach. We've got some commandos here in Wistram, and then we get to the 6th Airborne, and there is a huge pile of fog of war units on the southern drop zone as well as the main drop zone here. The engineers that landed with the airborne were able to throw up some improved positions pretty quickly on the main drop zone here. The companies down here will of course be digging in this coming turn and to again secure or attempt to secure the landing zone overnight until we can start to get more of these fog of war units regrouped. The 21st Panzer is pretty much the largest formation for the Germans in this area, and many of the units have activated, as you can see here. However, they're just not, they don't really have the strength to go in and make any attacks right now. There's some engineers or pioneers here that dug a defensive position. They will probably continue to dig some defensive positions to try to set up a perimeter to limit the expansion of the airborne here. So that's kind of where we stand here on the southern maps. It's basically just 21st Panzer Division up here near the northern edge. A few of their battalions have been activated, and they are in the process of driving northward to join the fight. But that's where we stand at basically early on in the PM game turn of June 6th. So far, so good, and I'll be back shortly with another update once we probably once we get through the end of this PM game turn, or maybe I'll wait till I get to the end of the June 6th game day. So thanks for watching, take care, and we'll see you next time.